Was the Garden of Eden a real place, or was it just a story, a moral lesson? If you believe the Bible, it was a real place. I happen to believe it was a real place that God made here on earth in the beginning. In 6 literal 24-hour days. I don't believe in the gap theory. But where is it? Or where was it? The Bible tells us that there were 4 rivers that went into it. And at the head of one river, those 4 rivers merged. Okay, but where? Could we look at a map and say for sure there it is? I don't think so. Because of the flood. It was devastating. It reshaped the face of the planet. And to think that we could accurately point out on a map where it is or was, frankly, is laughable. But, admittedly, I have no evidence for where I think it is. And yes, I see the irony. In order to really understand the true devastation of the flood, I'm going to leave a link in the description below to the full video I'm about to show you, but I shortened it just to kind of stay on topic and deal with the things that were most relevant. Take a look at this, and then we'll dive into scripture, and we'll take a look at a few things on the map.
Then, in the 600th year of Noah's life, in the 2nd month, the 17th day of the month, the same day were all the fountains of the great deep broken up, and the windows of heaven were opened. These 2 events, the fountains of the great deep breaking up and the windows of heaven opening, began the first day of a 371-day-long calamity that resurfaced the earth and killed everything that moved on land. Hot magma mixed with steam pierced the Earth's crust. Giant rifts or tears ran thousands of miles across the planet. Scalding hot magma vaporized massive amounts of water that jetted into the atmosphere. The water fell back to Earth as intense global rain, along with torrential rain from heaven for 40 days. Worldwide catastrophic rifting caused massive mud-filled tsunamis to speed across deep ocean floors, then onto shallow ocean floors, killing everything in their path. The first mega-sequence wipes out mostly shallow marine habitats. The bursting fountains of the great deep spew out megatons of magma and carbon dioxide. Sure enough, the first mega-sequence rocks show a spike in volcanic activity and massive amounts of carbon dioxide. During these first 40 days, intense water currents overtopped most of the flooded continents. Water-laden sediment travels at highway speeds. Thick sediment blankets start covering low regions of the continent. Fossils show that the first 3 mega-sequences buried the shallow seas that were filled with marine life, as these deposits have almost no trees or land animals. All 3 mega-sequences covered similar environments across North and South America and Africa, the 3 continents mapped so far. One global cause, Noah's flood, best explains this one worldwide effect. Then by the 40th day of the flood, the Absorica megasequence began hitting. The maps show that this is when things got much worse. Something shoves the water over the tops of even the high lands from that ancient world. The newly forming ocean floor offshore is so hot that it starts very thick, pushing up the ocean waters from beneath. Sea level rises dramatically. Molten magma rises and fills the widening gaps, pushing the mid-ocean ridges wider. The hot ocean floor shoves against the continents, then slides beneath them like giant conveyor belts, deep beneath the earth in some places. As the diving ocean plates subduct under the land, they push down the continental edges and then release them, creating tsunami cycles that blanket the continents. Tsunamis were happening in cycles, several every hour, and with long stretches of subduction zones active at the same time. The incoming phase of a tsunami has a much higher speed and is highly turbulent, which keeps the sediment in suspension, but it leaves behind layers of sediment as it slows down in the retreating phase. This cycle repeats several times every hour during the 150-day inundation stage of the flood, first entombing the shallow marine life, followed by land creatures in different habitats and elevations. leaving behind what we see today in the fossil record. The Bible records that on the 150th day of the flood, God made a wind to pass over the earth. The waters started to recede. The fountains of the deep and the windows of heaven were stopped, and the rain from heaven was restrained. Now enters the final mega sequence. Some of these stacked coal beds are up to 200 feet thick and cover areas that are 60 miles long by 60 miles wide. The sheer volume of plant material required to form such a massive layer of coal testifies to catastrophic circumstances. The massive runoff that began with the Tejas may also explain the lack of human fossils in the rock record. Any residual human remains left buried in earlier deposits were totally destroyed by the erosive, retreating floodwaters. In line with God's promise to wipe them from the face of the earth, any residual remains were ground up and likely spread in all directions over great distances by the Tejas, lessening the likelihood of finding any human fossil remains. Because humans were impacted earlier by the flood's violence, they were destroyed and thus not buried whole deep in the sediments, leaving no fossil traces. When God stopped the fountains of the great deep on day 150, the new ocean surface began cooling and sinking, allowing the floodwaters to lower as they sheeted off the continents into the new ocean basins. Psalm 104 describes the mountains being raised at the end of the flood and the waters draining down valleys and off the emerging new land surfaces. The seafloor rifting process and the resulting mountain forming process explains why sea creatures are found on mountaintops all over the world, high above current sea levels. For the remaining 220 days of the flood, the water recedes from the earth and it dries out, allowing time for earth to be replenished with vegetation for the animals to eat when they eventually come off the ark. This year-long catastrophe left behind a vast number of proofs that, quite frankly, make its occurrence obvious. First, we have the staggering volume of fossil-bearing sedimentary rocks around the world. Over 1 mile thick on average, the ark came to rest on the mountains of Ararat in the 7th month, on the 17th day of the month.
All right. Now, we're on Google Earth, obviously. Now, if you take a look at things here, these little cracks, I believe this is where the waters of the deep broke open. You can also see it here, all along there. I think that's where all of that erupted from. It goes all the way down, as you can see. Now, I also believe, let me get back to America here. I believe this little outline that you're seeing, I think that that is the ancient coastline before the flood. Now, if you look at these mountain ranges, this mountain range is very suspiciously parallel with the ocean shore. I think it hit with tsunamis, it raised up these mountains, hence all of these mountains. Same thing here. The Appalachian is parallel with the ocean shore. This is where the water came up and buried everything and kept hitting it, raised up the mountains. This is your old coastline. Now, if you look at it, all the continents are connected. So if you lower the seabed or lower the seawater by 100 feet, 200 feet, all of this is now dry land. All of the continents are connected. You can see here, this is the ancient coastline. It looked like there was even some land that went out here. All of that right there, that would have been above water. Even this, that's all above water pre-flood, which means Antarctica was connected. Here's more evidence of the water busting through. Now, you have another one, and this is the one I really wanted to show you. You have a little rift right here in the Red Sea. I think that's where more water came out, busted through. Now, in that verse, I said there's a river that goes down to Ethiopia. Well, look at that. What do we have here? Ethiopia. Now, this is a river, I believe, this is an ancient river that when the waters of the deep broke open, obviously caused a lot of havoc. And now it's much larger. Now it's the Red Sea. I think it was pretty small. And if you look, it goes all the way down here. So Ethiopia, Let's just say that this is an ancient river. All right. Go all the way up through here. And it's almost right in line with that there. What is that? Oh, it's the Dead Sea. That is where I think the Garden of Eden was. And this is where people think it is now. So right here, what you have, Euphrates, the Tigris, all that. And it's not without good reason. I mean, these rivers do go into here, but were they really called the Euphrates, the Gihon, the Pishon? Or are these just some random rivers that formed after the flood that seem to fit the four heads, where the four rivers comes into one? Well, that fits. But the flood destroyed everything. I do not think that's where it was. Now, here's some of my reasoning behind it. God, for whatever reason, wanted to give his chosen people, the Jews, this area of land. What is so significant about this part of the world? What is so significant about this land here that God holds in such high regard for some reason? Why? And it just so happens that the Dead Sea is, if you plot it, and I've done it before, from here to here, from Jerusalem to the top of the Dead Sea, it's about 20 miles. You can walk it in 8 hours comfortably. There are rivers right there. There's rivers that go into it. Is this where the Garden of Eden was? I can't prove it, but that's what I think. Now, I'm going to share something else with you. I can't prove any of this. This is just my theory. All right. When the flood happened, and it was a catastrophic event, all of this jettisoned into the atmosphere, and I also think it jettisoned into space. I think it was so violent that there were chunks of Earth being propelled into orbit, into space. I think that the reason why we see so many craters on the side of the moon that we can see, that is tidal locked with us, I think all those craters, not all, most, because we've had craters hit in recent times, but the majority of those craters happened during the flood. It was that destructive. That's why we don't see a lot on the dark side of the moon, on the other side that we don't see. There are some craters, but what I think is rocks were ejected from the planet with such velocity and so much power that it actually hit the moon. Some of the rocks kind of went behind the moon and came back in because of the gravity and landed it on the other side of the moon. And that's why you have less craters than you have on the side that is facing us, because it took the brunt end of the devastation. And I think the moon, all those craters on the moon, is evidence staring us right in the face of Noah's flood. So I wanted a second opinion on this, another set of eyes. Because am I crazy for thinking this? Am I the only one that thinks this? So I reached out to Jerry and asked him what he thought. Here's what he said. I've made the argument to my viewers here in this video that I don't think that the Garden of Eden is in the Persian Gulf, where a lot of people think it is, or perhaps north of there. My consensus and what I think is it's actually in the spot where the Dead Sea currently resides. Is there anything to that?
Well, of course, I've run into a few people that were interested in, trying to find, where the garden was located. The Bible doesn't give any real specifics, except we do know that it's over that way. We do know that there were 4 rivers that came out from that that area. So that would tend to verify that it was somewhat of an elevated area. God planted the garden eastward in Eden. So could have been like a high plateau area that existed over there someplace, and then those rivers, of course, came out from that elevated area.
All right, there is something I want to add to this. It's interesting that the verse says that God made the garden in the east of Eden. Now, it is my speculation that this area is pretty much, this area is pretty much where the Garden of Eden was, or the original area where God created man. So if you go eastward, that the Dead Sea is right there. That's where I think it was. So it all aligns. Very significant area. So it all kind of lines up. Getting back to Jerry now.
Over the years, I also, and of course, you and I have never really talked about this, but I also suspected that it was in the Dead Sea area, but maybe not for the same reason that you think. That particular sea is the lowest spot on the planet. It's like 300, I didn't check it, but I think it's over 300 kilometers, or 300 meters, 300 meters below sea level. I can remember traveling down toward there from Jerusalem and stopping at a sign that said sea level. And of course, at that particular location, there was a fellow there that had some camels, and I got my first camel ride there, where they have the sea level marker. But then, of course, we traveled a lot further down toward the lake itself, the sea itself. One of the positions that I think Ron held, and again, because we've been talking about a lot of the discoveries of Ron Wyatt, I think Ron came down, and certainly he never gave any clue or any intention that he would be looking for the remains of the Garden of Eden that I'm aware of. And I think that's because he believed in some commentary that was put out over about 150 years ago, I believe, in a book called Patriarchs and Prophets. And I'll just go ahead and share a little section here with you. And I think this gives you an idea what perspective Ron had. It said that the Garden of Eden remained upon the earth long after man had become an outcast from its pleasant paths. So, when we think back when we go back into Genesis, look at the story, how things develop with creation and God creating and planting the garden there, and then putting Adam and then Eve and making it as their garden home. And then finally, because of rebellion, being escorted out of there, that garden then, of course, was a place that you could come and visit, or you could see for quite some time. And as it says in here, it says the fallen race were long permitted to gaze upon the home of innocence, their entrance barred only by the watching angels. And so the Bible tells us that an angel was placed there. And a lot of people may not understand the reason for that, but the reason that the entrances were guarded was because in the Garden of Eden, you had the tree of life. And God was not allowing sinful humanity any longer after being escorted out. He was not going to allow them access to the tree of life. It says here, at the cherubim guarded gate of paradise, the divine glory was revealed. Hither came Adam and his sons to worship God. Here they renewed their vows of obedience to that law, the transgression of which had banished them from Eden. When the tide of iniquity overspread the world, and the wickedness of men determined their destruction by a flood of waters, the hand that had planted Eden withdrew it from the earth. But in the final restoration, when there shall be a new heaven and a new earth, Revelation 21:1. It is to be restored, more glorious, adorned than at the beginning. And so I think that Ron looked at that particular commentary that was written, and I think he saw the logic in that. That the fact that it would be just, it was a special place that God had planted during creation week, and he would move it out of harm's way, if you will. The flood event, I don't think we on this side can hardly even imagine the devastation. You know, the Bible tells us that the earth, you know, kind of rocked to and fro like a drunkard.
Oh, yeah.
You know,
Yep.
and so you know, when you think of the planet, you know, being just kind of thrown into such a catastrophe, and all of this this water and the weight of the water and all of the movement of where the tectonic plates had fractured and broken up and everything is moving around, shifting, and so forth. It is a wonder that Noah in the boat even survived.
Yeah.
It was so catastrophic. Now, if a large section of Earth, if you will, was just kind of taken up out of harm's way, that's one of the reasons I believe it was at the Dead Sea. I believe that was an elevated plateau area that was just chucked right on out of there. And to even imagine that the Dead Sea is pretty good size. If anybody that's been there will realize that. But to just kind of pull that out of there would be quite the miraculous task. But certainly something that God would be able to do.
In my mind, and what led me down the path to kind of think that it's at the Dead Sea is throughout the Bible, Israel, Jerusalem, it has some kind of significance to God. That location on earth, for whatever reason, God
Sure.
really favors and gave it to his chosen people, the Jews.
Well, the Holy
Now-
City, we know from Zechariah 14, we know that the Holy City is going to come and actually a foundation, the mountains will split, and it will provide a foundation right there near Moriah. So that's, you know, God is going to basically set up his earthly city. The New Jerusalem will be planted right there. So he did kind of select that location, and it's always been a location that has been in somewhat conflict.
Yeah.
and it's almost like the enemy is trying to preempt and prevent that from happening. So we'll I mean, obviously God's gonna win out, and it'll happen just as the Bible said.
You know, one of the things for me is Jesus was baptized in the Jordan River. And if you look at it on a map, the Jordan River feeds right into the Dead Sea. I think that's significant. What's the significance? I don't know. But we'll know that later when the whole plan is revealed to us. This is where people think it is, right here in the Persian Gulf, but in reality, I think this little red dot is the actual place. And you can see how the rivers go, and they even pointed it out here, where the river had to go through the Red Sea in order to get down to Ethiopia. That makes sense, but I don't think it went to the east like it shows. I think it went straight north. And the Jordan River is one of the ancient rivers that's mentioned. No proof, but that's just what I think. Yeah, I know you all are going to light me up in the comment section. Brandon, you don't know what you're talking about. You got the IQ of a wet dish rack. Yeah, that one gets used a lot. It's just my theory. This is what I believe. You don't have to agree with me. In fact, a lot of people don't. On a lot of issues that I go over on my channel, and that's fine. But these are my opinions alone, and I can't back any of it up. It's just my theory. Well, until next time, we'll be seeing you.